Let's take a look at how you prepare 3D printed models for painting and eventual inclusion in a terrain setup. First thing I want to look for is any kind of large noticeable print lines. You'll see here, for example, on this piece of the column, this is an area that has some very large noticeable print lines, little bits of gaps between each of the print lines. This is a very easy thing to address, and I can show you how to do that right now. Start by applying a few drops of super glue along the area where you need to reinforce the print lines. Then take another tool. For example, in this case, I'm using a plastic spoon, but any kind of non-brush utensil can work. And you just want to spread that super glue out across the entire area. Finally, go ahead and hit the super glue with some of the accelerant, and that will make it dry very quickly in place, giving this 3D printed area a nice hard shell. Using 100 grit sandpaper is a great way to start sanding down the areas you were just working on. If you want to get even more smoothed out surfaces, you can then go ahead to more finer grit sandpaper, but to be honest with you, for tabletop gaming terrain, that's not really necessary. With the rock floor piece of the Judgment of Osiris set, you're going to notice a series of concentric rings slowly going towards the center of the terrain piece. This is caused by the fact that 3D printers build these terrain pieces up layer by layer. To remove these rings, you're going to want to use some sandpaper. In this case here, I've got 60 grit high quality sandpaper. I'm going to use it to sand down these rings and give the overall terrain piece a little bit of slope from the center to the outside edges. So there you go, with only about a minute or two of sanding, you can remove the concentric rings, and then with a combination of that sanding plus primer as well as paint, it'll go ahead and hide any of the other effects that show this piece was built in a series of layers. And in the end, it'll look great on your terrain setup. Let's talk about assembling your terrain pieces. For the Judgment of Osiris terrain set, you have 3 things that need to be assembled. 2 columns like this, and 1 large spire. For these columns, you need to align the top separation of the bricks along with the separation in the bottom of the brick. So you have a line going vertically along the column here in the top half, and you want to match it up with a line that goes along vertically here in the bottom half. First thing you want to do when it comes to assembling 3D printed terrain pieces is to just lightly sand down the 2 sides that you're going to go ahead and be gluing together. I'm laying down 100 grit sandpaper, and I'm going to go ahead and sand down the sides, and then I'm going to glue them together as I just mentioned about a little bit ago. So line the line here along the top with the one on the bottom, and stick the pieces together and hold them there for about 1 minute. Please note that with this particular column, the idea was to go for the look of hand-cut quarried sandstone rock. You'll notice that the diameter of the top half does not exactly match the diameter of the bottom half. That was an intentional design feature to kind of capture that effect of hand-cut quarry sandstone. The other piece you need to assemble with your Judgment of Osiris set is your sandstone spire. And just like with the columns, there is a certain way these 2 pieces go together. So once again, you're lining up this line right here going down the middle of the top piece and the bottom brick with the line that's in the middle of 2 bricks down from the top on the bottom piece. As with the columns, you want to sand down each of the sides with the 100 grit sandpaper just a little bit. Then apply some super glue to each of the 2 halves and then glue them together. Hold the 2 pieces together about 1 minute and you should be good to go. Also note that due to the fact that each layer of brick is a little bit smaller than one below it, the areas you're gluing together are not the exact same size. The bottom of the top half is just a tiny bit smaller than the top of the bottom half. Now, once again, that's intentionally done by design. For the priming step of any 3D printed piece, I like to use auto body primer. This not only gets a nice finish on the terrain piece itself, but many types of auto body primer are designed to fill small scratches. These types of primer then therefore work great at reducing the effect of 3D printed lines even further. When it comes to using auto body primers, it's very important to follow the instructions of the can. Each manufacturer has a slightly different process of how you apply the primer to ensure that the gaps are filled in to their maximum extent.